I really grew up with communications and sports the way Nancy Pelosi grew up with politics. You know, my mother taught speech and debate at Indiana University. My father was a television, radio, and sports broadcaster my entire life. And he was the sports director at WWJ here in Detroit, and one of the voices of Michigan football, and the recent president of the Detroit Sports Broadcasters Association at the time that I was offered this job. And he didn't hesitate when I told him they'd offered me a job to do sports. He said, "You take it." And I also said to him, "Well, Dad, if I take this job, I'm going to have to get into this issue of the locker rooms." Because at that time, the issue was kind of working its way through the courts, and it had been reported. There'd been some skirmishes, but it wasn't resolved. And he said to me, "Absolutely." He said, "You will have no credibility as a reporter or a journalist if you don't go in those locker rooms." So one of the first things that I did was to make appointments with the general managers of the teams and to talk to them, introduce myself to them. And I will never forget sitting across the desk from Tiger general manager Jim Campbell. Now, any of you who've been around a while will remember this man. He is your classic curmudgeon old baseball guy. And he was very courteous to me as I was telling him my new job and all that kind of stuff. And he's leaned way back in his chair, smoking his cigar. And then I said to him, "And I'd also like credentials for your locker room." Well, he took that cigar out of his mouth. You know, he leaned up in his chair and he leaned across that desk and he looked at me and he said, "Over my dead body, you will go in our Tiger clubhouse." Well, just a few months later, a federal court ruled that the New York Yankees were discriminating against Melissa Ludke of Time Life, Sports Illustrated, and sued. And they said, you know, this is discrimination. You can't let the male reporters in and keep the female reporters out. It was appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court refused to hear it. And that sent shockwaves through professional sports. Well, I was already on the job as that happened. So the spring of 1979 was really when the first test came because it was opening a baseball season. And once again, I know so well that it is one thing for a law to be passed. It's another thing entirely to be the lone woman standing outside of a professional locker room, practically hyperventilating, because even your cameraman doesn't want to be seen in there with you. They're like, is there somebody else who can go there? And forcing yourself to walk in and face whatever's waiting for you on the other side.